What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to the video today. I've got a special video coming up talking about 20 drivers across the world who are not currently racing NASCAR who should race at the Project 91 car. Now, there's a new Project 91 car that Trackhouse has made that will be debuting later this year at Watkins Glen. Justin Marks has said at this car starting next year, he liked to run 6 or 8 races with the car. This includes all the road courses and, of course, the Daytona 500 as well. And today I'm telling you 20 drivers who I believe should be considered for the opportunity to race in the Project 91 car. So let's jump into it. The first driver that I think should be considered to potentially drive the Project 91 car is Julio Castroneves. He's the first one. The reason I'm saying Julio Castroneves is because Julio Castroneves is 47 years old, but he's racing like he's 27 years old. Julio Castroneves is having one of the greatest career resurgences we have ever seen. He won the Indianapolis 500, winning his 4th Indy 500 last year. He won the SRX race at Five Flags about a week or two ago, and he also won the Rolex 24 earlier this year. On top of that as well, he's actually promised a NASCAR ride after winning the race at Five Flags for the SRX. He was told that he's promised a ride. Keep this in mind, he didn't get into the car until 24 hours prior. He wasn't even supposed to get in that race and comes out and wins the race. Julio Castroneves has gotten everything he wants to, and he wants to race in NASCAR really, really badly. And I think Justin Marks would be a great person to bring a guy like Julio Castroneves in. He's the first driver that needs to be considered. The second driver that needs to be considered for the Project 91 car is a 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and arguably the greatest NASCAR driver of all time, Jimmie Johnson. Jimmie Johnson has not raced in NASCAR since 2020, but there's a big reason why I'm considering Jimmie Johnson. And I know a lot of people are thinking, well, isn't this car supposed to be for international drivers? Well, yes, this car is meant for international drivers, but the reason I'm saying Jimmie Johnson is because Jimmie Johnson is very interested in doing the double. And Justin Marks did say very, very recently in an AMA and Reddit that he said that if Jimmie Johnson wants to do the double, that he would basically have the opportunity to drive the Project 91 car. And this car is pretty competitive right now. And also, Darian Grubb will probably be the crew chief for him as well in that car. Jimmie Johnson is also a really good driver on ovals as well. He's been really great in IndyCar on the oval. So I think Jimmie Johnson should absolutely be considered and should be a high-profile driver that should be considered. He's the second driver on my list. The third driver that I think should be considered is a current Formula 1 driver who currently drives for McLaren, Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo has had some ambition. He's been looking to potentially race in NASCAR. He's a massive NASCAR fan, and he has said that really he only wanted to race for Junior Motorsports. But Justin Marks has said that Daniel Ricciardo is a driver that he is considering as a potential opportunity to race in NASCAR. And like I mentioned, Daniel Ricciardo is a big fan of NASCAR. In fact, he drove the 1987 Dale Earnhardt Wrangler Chevy around the racetrack at COTA before the green flag dropped. I believe on the Saturday, the day before, he drove one of the legendary 3 cars because he's a big fan of the Earnhardt family. Daniel Ricciardo is also a really, really good driver. I know the last couple years in McLaren Formula 1 have not gone absolutely fantastic, but I think Daniel Ricciardo should absolutely be considered to be a front runner to drive this car. I think he'd be a great driver in this car. I've really wanted him to do it for a long time, and hopefully he is considered as a potential candidate to race in this car. The fourth driver that I think should absolutely be considered, and this one's a little bit controversial, this one's a little bit higher, but we have another American driver who currently races in IMSA, Jordan Taylor. Jordan Taylor has been racing in IMSA. He currently drives for the Corvette organization. He has some interest in racing in the Hendrick Le Mans car that's going to be around, and also has won the Rolex 24 and a lot of major events in the IMSA calendar and a lot of major events. I believe he's also in Le Mans 24 hours as well in the GT class, if I'm not mistaken. Jordan Taylor is also a massive fan of NASCAR, and a couple years ago, he actually was almost able to race for Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, and I believe the A car, but that deal never really came through, unfortunately. I think Jordan Taylor, like I said, he has a character named Rodney Sandstorm, and I think Jordan Taylor's also got a great personality as well, and I think all the other 3 have great personalities as well, but Jordan Taylor coming into the sport would be amazing. And again, he's really helping Hendrick Motorsports out as well. And I believe Trackhouse has a lot of driver work with the Hendrick group right now. So I think Jordan Taylor would absolutely be a great candidate to go to this Project 91 car. The fifth driver that I think should be considered is the defending Indianapolis 500 champion, the winner of the 2022 Indianapolis 500, and the current points leader in the IndyCar Championship, Marcus Ericsson. Marcus Ericsson, like I mentioned, currently drives for Chip Ganassi Racing in the IndyCar Series currently at the moment. And Marcus Ericsson said, I believe on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, after winning the Indianapolis 500, he says he's a big fan of NASCAR, has been really into showing love for American-based racing. And Marcus Ericsson and I have also been wanting to come over to NASCAR for a very, very long time. He's been great on every type of track he goes into. He's been great on ovals. He's been great on road course tracks. And of course, this car is meant to be on road courses as well. But what about a street course? We also won a street course race last year at the Nashville Grand Prix, the first ever race in Nashville for the IndyCar Series on the streets of Nashville. I think Marcus Ericsson would be an amazing candidate, bring the Husky Chocolate sponsorship as well. And Marcus Ericsson is always focused and always driven. Since coming to IndyCar, he's been extremely successful, and I think Marcus Ericsson should absolutely be considered as a front runner to be a candidate for this car. The sixth driver that should be considered is Marcus Ericsson's teammate and arguably one of the greatest IndyCar drivers of all time, and winner also of the Rolex 24, and I believe some other big races as well, Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon, of course, also 2008 Indianapolis 500 champion, is a driver that actually has tested a NASCAR Cup Series car. He tested a stock car back in 2011. He was actually testing a car in 2011 for Mr. Jamie McMurray. And he was a driver who has also had some ambitions. In fact, I think at one point maybe was being considered to drive a NASCAR Xfinity Series car a couple of years ago, but that really never came to fruition. Scott Dixon also, I believe, knows Justin Marks very, very well. And I think Scott Dixon would be a great candidate. He is arguably one of the greatest IndyCar drivers of all time. And I think it would be an amazing challenge to bring a guy over like Scott Dixon into the world of racing and into the world of NASCAR as well. Scott Dixon, even though he's not really the biggest contender for the championship this year in NASCAR, IndyCar I should say, he is still a very, very great driver. And I think Scott Dixon should be considered because he is a really good driver and deserves to be in NASCAR, should test it out. In the number 7 position, we have a driver who is currently racing in IndyCar and is racing for a rival organization who currently drives for Team Penske. We have Scott McLaughlin. This one is a little bit out there because Scott McLaughlin currently drives for Team Penske, and I'm not entirely sure if Scott McLaughlin will be allowed to leave Team Penske. But I have a big reason why I want to see Scott McLaughlin race in NASCAR. He raced in V8 supercars, and it was rumored at one point that he was being considered to potentially drive one of the Team Penske cars in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and maybe a second Penske car for maybe a race or two about a year or two ago, but now he's completely focused on IndyCar. I've been wanting to see Scott McLaughlin race in NASCAR for a while. Whether it's a road course race or an oval track, I've been wanting to see him race on like a mile and a half or something like that, bring him into the world of NASCAR and see what he can do. He's already been one of the greatest V8 supercar drivers in the history of V8s in Australia and is a driver that's really doing well in IndyCar at the moment. He should absolutely be considered as a potential candidate for this ride. I think Scotty Mack would be amazing. He's a guy who's really fast on ovals. He's been good this year in IndyCar, and he should absolutely be considered for this ride. The 8th driver that I should be considered for the potential to drive their Project 91 car is the other driver that currently drives for McLaren in F1, Lando Norris. Yes, heard that right, Lando Norris. Now, why do I mention Lando Norris? Well, Lando Norris is a driver that has a massive audience and has a massive following on social media. Another big reason why I think he should absolutely be considered is Lando Norris himself has said that he's actually interested in wanting to test out a NASCAR Cup Series car. And why not test out a stock car by racing in a stock car? I think Lando Norris would be an amazing driver that would love to come in, race in the NASCAR Cup Series. It's the biggest stage in NASCAR, and he's got a big following as well, and people would absolutely enjoy it and absolutely love it. I think Lando Norris should be considered. He's a really good driver. He's been really touted as the next big thing, next big British driver along with George Russell. He's definitely a driver that absolutely would be a great addition to the world of NASCAR. I think Lando Norris should be considered. He's a great driver, and hopefully he is considered. The number 9 position on my list, we have a driver that is currently racing IMSA for a team that's technically associated with Hendrick Motorsports, the Action Express 48 Racing Cadillac. We have Kamui Kobayashi. Yes, Kamui Kobayashi, heard that right. Why did I mention Kamui Kobayashi? Well, of course, like I mentioned, he currently drives for Action Express Racing, and he has been definitely the powerhouse of that organization. And he's really awesome on road course tracks as well. He has also won Le Mans 24 Hours as well. The year I believe he won with Fernando Alonso and was part of the Toyota branding of families. Kamui Kobayashi is an extremely impressive driver, and I think a lot of people would love to see him, whether it's in IndyCar, whether it's in Formula 1 again, because he did also race in Formula 1, and that's something that Justin Marks is kind of looking at, is also Formula 1 drivers as well. But I think Kamui Kobayashi should be a driver that is considered. He's a world-class driver, a world-class talent, and although he does get an opportunity to race in NASCAR someday, I think he'd be a great addition to the sport. In the number 10 position, in the halfway position, This one's a little bit out there, but I want to see this guy come over and race in NASCAR. Now, he's not interested in racing in the Indianapolis 500, but he's interested in maybe racing. Maybe he could be interested in racing in NASCAR. Current championship leader in Formula 1 and defending Formula 1 champion Max Verstappen currently drives for Red Bull. Max Verstappen, absolutely, I want to see him come out of his comfort zone in Formula 1 and race in NASCAR. I think Max Verstappen coming over to NASCAR would be incredible. I don't know if he's really interested or not, but I know that he's mentioned NASCAR in the past, many years ago, and I think Max Verstappen coming over, and of course, Max Verstappen, what's kind of funny and something interesting is there's some family ties with him because his girlfriend is basically sister of Daniel Suarez's girlfriend. So I guarantee you Max Verstappen would probably not be against racing for Project 91 since he would technically be teammates with Daniel Suarez. And also, I think Max Verstappen is a world-class driver. I think Max Verstappen wants to prove himself, though. I think he should come try out a different form of racing like NASCAR. So I think Max Verstappen needs to come over. I think it would be great and amazing, and I hope that he considers maybe racing in NASCAR. In the number 11 position, we have 7-time Formula 1 champion and arguably the greatest Formula 1 champion driver ever with 102 wins in Formula 1, Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton's another one that's kind of out there, but unlike Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton has actually been interested in NASCAR. As a matter of fact, you have to actually remember that Lewis Hamilton in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, the year that Tony Stewart won the championship, Tony Stewart and him swapped rides, and actually at Watkins Glen swapped rides where Lewis Hamilton drove the 14 car because Mobil 1 had a partnership while Tony Stewart drove his Formula 1 car. I think Lewis Hamilton also would be great to have him in our sport as well. I think him running the Daytona 500 would absolutely be grand, and maybe another extra car. Who really knows? But I think Lewis Hamilton would be amazing in NASCAR. There are so many people that are absolutely massive, and huge fans of Lewis Hamilton, and I think 1,000% Lewis Hamilton should be considered to race in the Project 91 car. He's had ambitions in the past to race in NASCAR, and he should be considered to drive in the Project 91 car. Driver and the 12th driver that I think should be considered is the defending IndyCar Series champion and a driver nearly won the Indianapolis 500 the last 2 years, Alex Palou. Alex Palou currently drives for Chip Ganassi Racing at IndyCar and has not, I believe, scored a victory up to this point, but is definitely once again, for the second year in a row, a championship contender. Alex Palou has also raced in the Rolex 24 and has had ambitions to race in other forms of racing as well. And I think if Alex Palou really wants to prove himself, I think coming over to NASCAR would be an amazing thing. And remember, Project 91 and Trackhouse Racing kind of are associated together because Chip Ganassi Racing, Trackhouse Racing basically about the Chip Ganassi Racing stable. And Alex Palou, of course, teammates with Jimmy Johnson. I think Alex Palou would be an amazing candidate to come in because he's an amazing driver at a young age as well. He's becoming the new Scott Dixon. He's really classy, knows what he's doing, and I think he should absolutely be 1,000% considered for the Project 91 cars. I think he's a really good driver. The 13th driver that should be considered is another American driver who's being really asked to race in so many different forms of racing, currently drives an IndyCar, and is looking to potentially go to Formula 1. We have the driver who drives for Andretti Autosport, Colton Herta. Colton Herta is a driver, like I said, looking to maybe go to Formula 1 in the next year or two, but also currently drives for Andretti Autosport. But here's the thing about Colton Herta. Colton Herta has actually said he's been interested in maybe racing in the Daytona 500 and has also been maybe looking to maybe at one point, because remember a couple years ago, he actually was talking about this on the NASCAR Weekly podcast. He actually said he was maybe looking to run the Eldora truck race, go with Tony Stewart Eldora Dirt Derby at Eldora. Basically was looking to maybe run the Eldora truck race. And I think Colton Herta would be a great driver to bring into the world of NASCAR. He's very popular around the NASCAR communities, and I think he would be a great driver in NASCAR as well. He's fast at any type of track we go to. It really doesn't matter. He'd be a really fun addition to the world of racing. I think you should absolutely consider it, and I hope he is considered as a direct candidate for the Project 91 car. The 14th driver that I think should be considered is actually another driver who is a former NASCAR driver. He won 2 Cup Series races, 2007 at Sonoma, and 2010 at Watkins Glen, and one of the few drivers that came from the IndyCar world in the IndyCar invasion that was really successful, Juan Pablo Montoya. Juan Pablo Montoya has not raced in NASCAR since 2014, but so many people would really consider Juan Pablo Montoya to be all around one of the best drivers in the racing history. He's won pretty much everything he's gotten into. He's won F1 races. He's won IndyCar championships and races. He has won the Indianapolis 500. He's won the Monaco Grand Prix. And he's won NASCAR Cup Series races as well. and Xfinity Series races at the same time as well. And I think Juan Pablo Montoya coming back to NASCAR would be great. He's been racing in IMSA this year and has been doing really, really solid. He drives for Dragon Speed Racing. He's doing really good over there currently at the moment. And I think he should absolutely be considered to come back to NASCAR. I think he'd be a great addition to the racing world. He's absolutely a great driver. He knows what he's doing. And Juan Pablo Montoya should be considered as a world-class driver. The 15th driver that I think should be considered is another American driver who currently is driving for Andretti Autosport, but going into 2022-2023, he'll be driving for McLaren McLaren SP next season. Alexander Rossi. Alexander Rossi is one driver in IndyCar that I've been really, of all the drivers, I really want to see him race in NASCAR. Because Alexander Rossi is extremely talented. I know the last couple of years in IndyCar have not gone really, really well for him, but I do believe that the last couple weeks, especially the last couple races in IndyCar, he's been doing really, really well. And I think Alexander Rossi would be great. He's racing the Rolex 24. He's racing every massive major event that you could think of outside of NASCAR. And I think he's had ambitions in the past to race in NASCAR as well. So I think he would be a great candidate and a great addition to the Cup Series field. I think like I said, I think Alexander Rossi is a really, really talented and great driver. And I think he should absolutely be considered as a potential candidate to drive in the Project 91 car. The 16th driver that should be considered in being a Project 91 car is technically Alexander Rossi's teammate at the moment, former Formula 1 driver who never won a race, and a driver who's come close to winning in IndyCar, could have won a couple of races in Indianapolis, Romain Grosjean. Romain Grosjean, of course, like I mentioned, currently drives a 28 for Andretti Autosport, and also one thing about him, he's also another driver that's actually has some ambitions to race in NASCAR. As a matter of fact, at the Indy Road Course last year, he actually had said that maybe one day he could race in NASCAR. He said it's a long overdue thing, but he said one day he might consider racing in NASCAR. And with him being a former Formula 1 driver and being really, really popular around the paddock, around the garage as well, I think he'd be a great addition. He's got a great personality. He's got a good streaming presence. And a lot of people know the name Romain Grosjean. In fact, he is one of the most popular IndyCar drivers. And among NASCAR fans, a lot of people love Romain Grosjean. Not just for what happened in Abu Dhabi, but really, really are massive fans of a driver like Romain Grosjean. And I think he'd be an absolutely positive candidate and bring a lot of positive energy. And also is an extremely aggressive driver as well, which NASCAR would really fit the candidates of a guy like Romain Grosjean. So he should absolutely be considered to be a potential candidate of this ride. The 17th driver that I think should be considered for the Project 91 car is the 2013 Indianapolis 500 winner and driver currently competing in the SRX and nearly won the Indy 500 in 2022, Tony Kanaan. Now, why did I mention Tony Kanaan? Well, Tony Kanaan, like I mentioned, a 2013 Indianapolis 500 winner. And one thing that's kind of weird, and I really haven't heard any updates on this, but a few weeks ago, it was reported by a Brazilian outlet, and it could have absolutely been a troll, but a Brazilian outlet did say that basically Tony Kanaan apparently has two races that he's looking at to potentially race either this year or going into 2023. Now, I'm not sure if that's a Cup Series right, maybe with Spire Motorsports, or maybe that is basically with a Xfinity Series with like Junior Motorsports. That really was made unclear. But I think Tony Kanaan, it would be awesome to have a guy like Tony Kanaan race in NASCAR. Tony Kanaan's got a great personality. He is an extremely popular driver in racing, and I think Tony Kanaan should absolutely be 1,000% considered to be a potential driver in this ride. He's a good driver, and I hope he absolutely gets considered to drive the Project 91 car. The 18th driver that I think that should be considered is two-time IndyCar champion and looking for his third IndyCar championship. Another American driver and the last American driver on this list, Josef Newgarden. Josef Newgarden, like I mentioned, currently drives for Team Penske. So this one's kind of a little bit out there because, like I mentioned, he currently drives for Team Penske. However, Josef Newgarden has said maybe one day, if the Charles came back on the NASCAR schedule, he would consider racing in NASCAR. Now, of course, Josef Newgarden is also still a big fan of racing IndyCar, so there's another potential reason why he would not be considered for this ride. However, I think Josef Newgarden should absolutely consider coming to NASCAR because I think he is an awesome driver and extremely talented. And remember, he's really only in his young 30s, so he's got plenty of time if he wants to race in NASCAR. He's got plenty of time to get it done. So why not? Why not give NASCAR a try? I think he would do great. I think he would do amazing, and he absolutely should consider coming into NASCAR. The 19th driver that I should be considered is 2016 IndyCar champion Simon Pagenaud. Simon Pagenaud, of course, the 2019 Indianapolis 500 winner and winner of many big races, including, I believe, also the Rolex 24 as well. Simon Pagenaud, like I mentioned, currently drives for Meyer-Shank Racing, and he's actually done a really good job over there with that team. He's also had some issues with some buttons and a lot of electrical issues. Simon Pagenaud, love to see him in NASCAR. I think there's a good opportunity he can do it. There's really a good place for him. And I think that with him getting up in age, I think a lot of you're going to see a lot of drivers do it. I think he should absolutely be considered as a candidate. And the final driver that absolutely should be considered to drive the Project 91 car is four-time IndyCar champion, what used to be called the Champ Car Series, Sebastian Bourdais. Now, Sebastian Bourdais is probably the last person you would think I put on this list, which he is the last person on the list. But Sebastian Bourdais has raced in IMSA for Chip Ganassi Racing and has also raced for a lot of massive and big teams as well. Now, he's not raced IndyCar, but he did really well with AJ Foyt Racing last year. And I do believe that Sebastian Bourdais should be considered as a potential candidate for this ride. I think he'd be great, and he should absolutely be considered. So, those are the 20 drivers who I think should race at the Project 91 car for Trackhouse. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my page on the list schedule over that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. Who is the driver that you think should be considered to drive in the Project 91 car? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, we're for sure going to have the Truck Series race view from National Super Speedway as we begin the second half of the season for NASCAR, and maybe a NASCAR news video, but it's unclear right now if that will be. Depends on how much news we have. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content like F1 and other motorsports on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.